How has your comfort grown over these last several drafts, just with your staff? I mean, I'm not saying you weren't comfortable a few years ago, but I mean, you know all these guys better than you did 3 years ago, and I'm sure it's gotten easier, or whatever the word is, to work with them.
Yeah, I think for sure it's like it's like being on a team. The longer you have teammates and you get to know people, the more comfort you have. Uh, I'm really excited about where our staff is at. Just the continuity we have, and I really think we have a good blend of some younger scouts, newer in the business, and then some really seasoned veteran guys, and then some in the middle, and then geographically with the coverage we have all over the world, ultimately leading up to Jerry Fortin and Jason Idnell. I think they do a great job of being clear and concise with direction, but then also at meetings making sure they give everybody a voice. And so yeah, I think for me personally in the job, it helps being through the draft a few times, but for sure with the staff that goes a long way as well.
You're 30
Except the
hours.
staff, sorry.
You're 30 hours from the draft. How hot are GM's phones right now?
Yeah, it's busy. This is I'll say I've said it before. I mean, this is a great time of year. It's exciting. There's a lot going on. That's why I use color coded pens and notebooks to keep everything straight. But it's busy. There's a lot going on in the league. A lot of conversations, and every minute that you get closer to the draft, or the first round of the draft, things get even more intense because a lot of conversations are based around potentially what can be going on at the draft. So it's busy and as expected.
With how top heavy this draft is, as people say, of offensive talent, and maybe it's not even the Sabres, but how difficult might it be to crack into the top 10 for anybody? Whether you're at 13 or 11 even.
Yeah, I think if you historically look at the draft, it's very challenging to move up, especially the higher up you get. I can tell you, doing my job, I've had conversations up higher into the draft, closer to our pick, and then behind us. So kind of have all those scenarios discussed with different teams laid out, and then ultimately it's always going to come down to both teams' comfort level of how the draft's falling and does it make sense. But yeah, it's to answer the direct question, it's really challenging to move up, and if you do that, you're going to be giving up assets, and then it comes down to your comfort level.
Might it be more so this year?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I think if you pay attention to what is being talked about and written about, it's a deep draft. It's a very good draft, and you can say that standing here today because you're excited about the players. You don't know for some time until it plays itself out, but I would say it's probably yeah. The answer is probably yes, just because of the depth in this draft.
Why do you think it is so hard? Like, you've been in the top 10, so you've probably gotten calls from the other way. Like, why are teams reluctant to part with those picks and slide down a little bit?
That's it. Honestly, Matt, I think there's a year of work that goes into the first round, especially of the draft, when it comes to your list and the players. And I don't want to say there's a emotional attachment to your pick, but there kind of is in terms of the scouts. Saying, man, if we're this pick, we could get this 3 or 4 players. And there's just you start to get excited about what these players can do for your franchise down the road. And then you guys know me personally. I just believe that drafting well, developing well, and then retaining your players is kind of the recipe for how we're trying to build sustainable success. So that even for someone like me plays more of a importance to build this organization. So I think that's part of it. And in saying that, sometimes the way your list falls is you may have 3 or 4 players that you would say, if it's this one, this one, this one, or this one, I'm excited and they feel the same about. So that's where maybe teams would say, okay, I'll move back 4 slots or whatever the number might be because I'm comfortable. But the draft has to fall perfectly in your mind for that to happen. And as you guys saw last year, I mean, we tried so hard to move up to get the player that we were, passionate about getting with Kulik, and weren't able to do it just because, I think the teams around, they have to be willing to not call someone's name at that spot. So that's probably why it's so difficult.
Based on the long-term cap picture for your team and the expensive prices that are going to be on the market on Saturday, is it fair to say it's more viable for you to get a defenseman via trade?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, I go back to the drafting and developing. I mean, I think, to be honest, especially when you're talking about top four defensemen, it's if you have them, and it's really you're not going to let them go very often. So it's challenging to acquire either way, whether it's free agency or trade. I think there's a balance, right? If you are targeting a player through a trade, you're giving up assets or assets to get them. But it's not as simple as saying you gave up this to get this player. It's also then what's the next step with this player? Do they have 1 year and need a new contract? Do they have multi-year? And then when you start to project out your roster, you think, okay, if we do this, maybe 2-3 years down the road, we're going to lose this player off a roster. So now it's not an acquisition cost of just this and this. It's this, and this down the road. So that's the way I look at it. On the free agency route, you're not giving up an asset to get a player, but invariably when you go into the free agent market, term or dollar, especially if a player is in demand, you're going to have to give in on. So I think both sides are options. Both sides come with upsides and downsides, but we're continuing to look at both and see what makes sense for us and to help our team get better. But like I said to you guys last week, we also aren't going to do something desperation or think that we have to do something. It's only going to be done if it's right.
Is it challenging when you get attached to a prospect?
Yeah,
Because
Yeah.
I'm sure the teams are asking about players that.
it is. So the way I look at that, honestly, it's a great question. I really love to get to know the people in our organization, the players, who they are, what they're about, what makes them tick. Now, that helps because you're understanding the psychology of it. But at the end of the day, I always methodically go back to what's going to help our team get better and what's going to help us move forward and get us closer to trying to win a Stanley Cup. So I feel like I'm a nice person, but I want to win, and I want to win really bad, and I want to win as much as you can possibly want that. So will I make tough decisions? Of course, that's what we have to do.
As a hockey fan, how curious are you to see where Michkov goes? And as a GM, how curious are you to see where Michkov goes, given how it might impact you?
It's super fascinating this year. I mean, it's my time as general manager, I can't think of anything even kind of close to this where you have such a unique situation. I mean, I think all teams are having this conversation, right? The risk reward. Where is he going to go? I mean, obviously an elite player, and we'll see. But no, I think from probably both of what you said, from from the job I do every day, but also just overall fan of the game. This is a really interesting situation.
When you get that call from a team that's looking to move up, how much of what you do is looking at it, saying like, okay, what's the price we can get from them if we're comfortable doing that, and how much of that turns into maybe like a scouting paranoia of like, okay, what did we miss here?
Yeah, you could go down that road. I choose not to. I think the work's done before. So the way I personally handle these situations are, we've had all the initial conversations leading up to where we are today in front of us and behind us. You essentially look at your formula for what you believe is the right price to get, whether you're moving back whatever number of picks you're talking about. And conversely, if you're moving up, this is what we believe would be fair to move up. So you're having those discussions. You're essentially agreeing upon a price if that was to happen, because there's not enough time on the floor to be doing that. You have to almost have it saying, this is what we'd be willing to do. Okay, that makes sense. And now you're waiting until where exactly the pick goes, and then you have your couple minutes to make a deal like that. But the work's done before, which we've already done both ways.
How much of a priority is getting more size in your prospect pool?
Yeah. So I love really, really competitive, good hockey players that are intelligent. Let's start with that. But if they're all of that and big, that's really great. So we think about it, ask the prospects how tall their parents are and, all this stuff. So it matters for sure. But at the end of the day, you especially when it comes to the draft, you have to always come back to projection. And if you have a 6'2" player that you think is going to be, this in the NHL, which maybe is, let's just say, mid-level good hockey player, or you have a 5'11" player that you think is going to be a high end, that's where I kind of always go back to projection. But yeah, if we can add size, that's great. But, I also don't get carried away with that, because assets that are really good are important regardless, moving forward. And, when you look at our current NHL roster, overall, we're pretty good size. So I don't.
Maybe the NHL,
Yeah,
not so much
exactly.
the pool, right?
Yeah. So, it's something we talk about and you think about, but don't, I guess, prioritize that it's an absolute, need.
We talked last week about how your conversations are different with, your counterparts and so forth. Has it, since you've been here in the last couple of days, has it hit home maybe a little more that you guys have entered a different phase? You're looking at your team a little differently?
Yeah, yes, it has, which is really exciting, to be honest with you. We haven't accomplished anything near where, yet. We have a long way to go in terms of the steps that we, to become an elite team in this league. But I do believe that people are seeing what we have built and thinking that, we're on the right path. And when you talk to agents, trying to work on our own, contract with our own players, and them talking about players that wanting to be here and believe in what we're doing, no, it feels like we're heading in the right direction. But I feel like these conversations that maybe certain ones that you would have not been is open to the last year or two, we're having some more conversations around that, and then ultimately weighing what makes sense.
Kevyn, Quentin Musty's the big local angle this week. Part one, what do you make of his game? And part two, as somebody who lives and works in Buffalo, is it kind of cool to see a local kid get drafted that high?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you guys know I grew up in Buffalo. I played for the Wheatfield Blades when I was a kid, and I think anytime there's kids coming out of the Buffalo area that are going to get their name called at 18 years old in the NHL draft's pretty special. And then, going back to what the Pagulas have invested into Buffalo with the Harbor Center and the Academy Hockey and the Junior Sabres, and a lot of the stuff that they did for the area was to help just give kids an opportunity that are really passionate about the game to improve. And so Quentin Musty is someone that I've known for years. I've watched him since he was never small, because he was a big kid, even when he was little. But even when he was a little guy, I watched him and thought, this is a kid who's going to have a chance to become a pretty good player. So yeah, for him, it's super exciting. He's a really talented kid, and I'm happy for him and his family that they're here and the day's finally coming.
A lot of stuff is going in other organizations, so I have to ask, do you expect Seth to be your coach in Rochester next year?
Yeah, so Seth is, he is just, from my standpoint, such an important piece in our organization. I think what he's done in the 3 years has been pretty impressive with he and his staff. I absolutely do expect them to be, but at the same point, he and I have a very, very close relationship, and I've told him from day one, when and if there's a right opportunity, I want to help him in every possible way. I believe 100% that Seth Appert will be an NHL head coach someday. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, in my opinion. But for right now, where he's at, I think he feels like he's in a good spot.
And timetable on assistants? Like, what are you working on that?
You mean for Rochester assistants? Working on that right now. I had an interview yesterday or the day before that we did, but I'd say, hopefully, with one of them soon, and then the other one potentially sooner within the next few weeks.
And Pekka's departure, you don't have a spot, and he has a long relationship with Laviolette. That's pretty much the story, right?
It is, and and I know Peter Laviolette really well. Obviously, I played for him, and he's a great coach, and they have a history together. And Michael and I have known each other a long time, and I really appreciate what Michael's done in this organization as a player. And then, when he and I met 2 years ago, and he said, "Kevyn, I really, believe this is something I want to pursue." I challenged him in a lot of ways, and he responded just in every way. So he earned this opportunity. And that goes back to when you hire really good, smart people and you surround yourself with people like that, you also then have to be excited for them to take on the next step in their career. And he and I had a good heart-to-heart before when the Rangers asked for permission. I just wanted to make sure if he got it, he was going to go for the right reason. And clearly he is, and I'm excited for him.
What was your... Go ahead.
I was going to ask about qualifying offers with Jost and Clegg. Is that settled yet, or is that?
No, it's coming Friday. I think the days are running together, whatever the deadline. But yeah, it's something we're continuing to work through. We're going to have conversations leading, right up to it. But no, we've definitely prepared, and especially with, Jost, we've talked to them for the last number of weeks about how he's someone that we'd love to have back, and kind of balls in his court a little bit now.
Nothing signed, though?
Not yet. No.
What was your reaction to the NHL awards last night, and knowing Rasmus like you do? How do you think he's going to kind of internalize
Well,
where he
I think the
was?
award showed that I don't have a vote, because I probably, would have been voting pretty high on a couple of our players. Yeah, I mean, look, I think someone like Rasmus Dahlin showed the entire world who he is and what he's about, and the player he is. So I'm sure he'll use it as a little bit of fuel and motivation moving forward. And hey, Owen Power, the Calder, it was great to be up for the Calder, and the players around him obviously are great players and well deserving. But in terms of what his impact is on the game, and the way, the role he plays and the way he plays, he's my rookie.
Skinner got a fifth place Lady Byng vote.
I got to tell him to take a couple more cross-checking penalties next year. I didn't know that. That's funny. Maybe he would have been higher if he didn't get suspended. I'm going to talk to him about that.
Those votes are gonna go differently though when you're a playoff team.
Yeah, for sure, exactly. No, you know what? It goes back to the sign you guys see when you walk in our locker room about earning it. And this is all, when I've talked about this for the last 2 years, this is all part of it. We have to earn it every day in terms of how we do things. And I have to earn the respect amongst, the league and the way we're running things as an organization, and be looked on as an organization that is doing things the right way, where players want to come play. Our coaches have to earn that every day. And when you do that, and then these type of things will take care of themselves, because I believe in our players. I know the talent, and what the passion that they have. But I agree with you. I think that's part of why that sign's so important to me, and it's going to continue to be.
What's your dialogue been like with Victor Olofsson? You've been in these spots before where guys' names come up in trade rumors. What's your approach been with him?
Yeah, so for, Vic, I think, there wasn't any secret at the end of the season. There was maybe a frustration from Vic in terms of, just kind of the way that some of the games went towards the end. And, I think although there was an honesty back and forth between he and I and Donnie, and also, his agent, that I think he knows he could have maybe performed at certain times better, but also that maybe we, need to make sure that we're helping him be put in situations where his gifts can come out and perform better. So it's all really positive with Vic. We're open to kind of looking at everything, and that's what I told him. I promised him I would do, and see what's out there. But I also think that we really like Victor Olofsson, and if, we get back, we're starting in training camp, and we need to make sure that we're putting him in a position to succeed. So that's kind of the give and take of it. But the way I handle these things are, just open honesty, and make sure there's that we're all doing the best we can to kind of, move forward.
We've asked you about Owen and Rasmus and those contract talks. Have you broached the subject with Casey Middlestad's agent yet, with him being an RFA next summer?
No, and it's not from a lack of that we're not interested in doing that. We definitely are, in terms of what he means to our group, and the leader that he's emerged as, and just, certainly the way he performed on the stretch. But, in his situation, it's similar. He's under contract. I think this last season was a really good step for him to, kind of put a really strong year together and now take the next step. But he knows how we feel about him, and I think that, it's mutual. I think he really likes what we're building, and, would like to be part of it long term as well.